Hello, Alabama fans. We're doing our live show, the post-game show. A very shocking expectation, back-to-back weeks with insane games. I'm Tim Watts, the BamaOnLine.com publisher, and with us is Andrew Bone with the black hat. Our He does our team stuff, handles some team stuff too, but our recruiting editor, and Jimmy Stein, who just turned his fan off, and it's
Right.
dying a slow death like the Alabama defense. So welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. Not expecting this results, but regardless, we're here, win, lose, or draw after every games. I mean, almost a flip, right, guys, from last week where you saw Alabama up, unstoppable early on, and then Georgia walk it back. You kept wanting Alabama to walk it back, but just couldn't get there, could you, Jimmy?
Well, what I would want people to realize is Alabama's the same team that beat Georgia last week. That's it's still the same team, and you're also capable of playing this poorly. Uh, I don't think the defensive performance can be. You can't go overboard with the criticism. I mean, I think it was one of the worst defensive performances of my lifetime watching Alabama football. Be honest. I mean, that was the worst. I mean, '07 you lose to Louisiana Monroe, but that '07 Alabama team wasn't good. They didn't have a lot of players. They didn't have a lot of talent. I mean, this was the most talented Alabama team to play that poorly defensively I've ever seen. And that's just my honest call. Now, you know, we have to remember this same Alabama team beat an elite Georgia team just 1 week ago. So I think going too far off the deep end probably isn't the right thing, but it's bad. It's really, really bad. And the finger should mostly point at the defense. The offense scored 35. That's enough points to win on the road, and they didn't have the ball very much. Not an A-plus performance by any means by the offense, but this was a defensive epic failure. Grade is F minus minus minus.
The one thing that stands out to me was this wasn't a fluke. They beat Alabama. They looked more physical. They wanted it more. We knew there'd be a little bit of a hangover, but these guys, the 4th and 1, are you kidding me? Clark Lee had those guys playing hard. Front four could do nothing all night. You couldn't get pressure. You couldn't really stop the run. You only have two linebackers. You know what I mean? At some point, you kind of expected them. And later I saw a third, but you really expected maybe a 4-4 look. And if they got to beat you passing, make them beat you passing because the edge defense was really good outside that, the boundary plays was really good, Andrew.
Yeah, and credit to Vandy. I mean, they continued to make plays when they had to. 12 of 18 on third down, 39 minutes time of possession compared to Alabama's, I think, 17. I mean, the defense just couldn't get off the field. They looked unprepared. They they were over pursuing. They just had a bad game, and this isn't just a bad game. This is a bad game on top of the Georgia second half. They've given up 67 points in the last 6 quarters. Think about halftime against Georgia. It was 30-7. They were kicking Georgia's ass. And then they let Georgia get back into it. Everybody just assumes, okay, well, they just let the foot off the gas. Georgia's a good team. But Vandy just came ready to play. They were confident going into the game. They came into the game thinking that they could win. I think Alabama walked into the game thinking, this is Vanderbilt. We're going to be able to walk into Nashville. We got a lot of fans here. We're going to be able to win this game because we just beat Georgia, and that didn't happen today. So there's going to be some intense meetings, conversations with this team tomorrow week, because what's this team going to be able to do moving forward? Because trust me, there's a lot tougher games coming up than what they just had against Vanderbilt today.
Yeah, I actually feel like this game was tougher. Vanderbilt was tougher mentally and physically than Georgia was. And that's saying a mouthful. They were hitting. They were hitting. They were knocking the hell out of people. But I just don't think the 4-2-5 had a clue what to do here today. I mean, Freddie Roach is going to catch some heat, but you got 4 defensive linemen against 5 offensive linemen. That's a hard matchup to begin with. And then you don't really have the linebackers. I thought the one thing that stood out to me in the first half was that there wasn't many plays where they tackled and they went down on contact. You saw guys getting drugged or guys getting ran over or falling forward 4 yards. I just don't think you can get anybody off the field. And Jimmy, again, the third down, they were 9 of 12 from third down at one point.
Outrageously bad. You can't really point to any defensive. I mean, Q-Rob made a couple of good plays. A couple of DBs were there for some plays down the field. But I just can't emphasize enough how really poorly the defense played in terms of it was a bad plan. It was extremely poorly executed. I thought the discipline was bad. I think, it's silly, but Malachi Moore kicking the ball at the end of the game, I mean, it'd be, I think he should be suspended, frankly. I mean, that was just a complete lack of composure, poor leadership. It was just a complete F- performance by everyone that coaches and plays defense at Alabama. That's just completely honest. Now, offensively, there were some good things there. And I think had Alabama gotten the ball back, I think they might have won the game because Milroe in the offense probably would have found a way, but the defense just wasn't allowed. 40 points to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, you're almost at a loss. I mean, again, 400 plus yards. They passed the ball. They ran the ball. You just didn't see Jimmy. I think you're breaking up a little. Jimmy, you got a little sound. We hear a little static with you.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, mute it for 1 minute. See if you can figure it out. Let's make sure it's you, not me or Andrew.
Sure.
Well, it went away. He got scared of you, but. Yeah, I think that when you look at this game, I mean, there's not a lot to say. I mean, they had chances to win. I mean, I'm not even close to blaming it on the offense, but 2 turnovers were the difference in this game at the end of the day. And, a tipped ball and a bandit running free to hit Jalen. And, I thought the play calling was a little sporadic at times. They pinned us to the 4. Didn't really love the play calling right there, running into a 5-man front with 3 backers snuck up. They obviously were banking on the run. Even the last drive, it was just pass. There was no threat once we got to a certain point with that, Andrew.
Yeah, I felt like Alabama's defense was going to show up ready to play today. After what they did in that second half against Georgia, I thought they were going to have a little bit more fire under them. But those 2 turnovers were tough. I mean, especially the that late one in the game. I mean, Alabama was driving down the field. I mean, it wasn't that 3rd and long. It was 1st and 10 when Jalen got hit, when Pritchett got beat on that right side, and Jalen fumbled the ball, and they were able to drive down the field and score on that. Vandy was able to go down and score on that drive, whereas it seemed like Alabama was on the verge of taking the lead on that drive because they were moving the ball with it. They were moving the ball with ease for the most part, except for those 2 turnovers. That tip ball in the first half, and then that late sack. I mean, but like I said, give a lot of credit to Vandy. They came ready to play. They came inspired. They came prepared. Alabama offense, for the most part, did pretty well, I thought. Jalen had over 300. I think he had 312 yards passing throughout the night. I mean, Jeremy Bernard made some big plays. Ryan obviously made some big plays, but it just wasn't enough. And you give up 40 points to Vanderbilt. And hey, listen, they've scored over 27 points in every single game, but they've also lost 2 games. You felt like Alabama's defense was going to be able to do something. They had no answers tonight.
Yeah, they're going to have to be a little humbling and a little changing. I mean, I don't know how you approach Georgia and Vanderbilt the same way. I guess that's what confuses me the most. It kind of felt like the same game plan, right, Jimmy?
Well, one thing I want to point out about Vandy, they're definitely a better team. There's no question they're better. And Diego Pavia is an excellent football player. And I've said this week 2 or 3 times, had Auburn signed him, they'd be 5-0. I mean, he was probably one of the better transfer portal options out there at quarterback. This team also lost to Georgia State. They lost to Georgia State and beat Alabama. That's just outrageous. And again, I'll find some silver lining stuff, and I think it would start with the offense and Jalen Milroe and and Jeremy Bernard, as Bone said, and Ryan Williams making plays. And had the offense got the ball back, I'd feel pretty good about it at the very end. But the defense was just outrageous. 2022 at Tennessee, they gave up 52. This is way worse. Way
Tennessee
worse.
Tennessee was ablaze that year with that offense. That's a monsters.
That was a great team with great dudes. They outduded Alabama at some spots. This is completely different. This is again, Georgia State found a way.
Yeah, and again, even at the end, you couldn't get them close. I mean, even in the first half, I mean, how do you have them, off the field and you have double deuces on the field? How do you have Ryan and Zabian in the game? That's a banana play. Now, I'm not going to blame, Q Robinson for that hit on the quarterback. That's not, he brought his forearm across of him, reached for a pass, no intent. I mean, that's the rule. That's a penalty. But, I mean, there's 2 penalties right there extended. LSU, not LSU, shit. We don't even need to get to that game yet. But Vanderbilt pinned them at the 4, come out, and you're behind the chains right away, second 9, second 10. You're down in distance right out of the gate. Throw the ball down the sideline, almost get Ryan killed. And then the deep pass where Jalen's a foot, step and a half, step over the line. Just a momentum breaker, Andrew.
I mean, yeah, you felt like that was going to be a big play right there. And Jalen, I mean, he had a first down if he would have just taken off and ran. I mean, that's what I was thinking. I had no thought in my mind that he was about to throw the ball. I was watching that play, and I'm thinking, he's about to get 20, 25 yards right here. But he threw it. And I don't know how many yards he was past the line. I didn't really see that. I guess it was a foot or 2, but man, I mean, that was such a momentum changer right there because you had a chance to drive down the field, but I guess and I felt like that was one of those plays where it was going to be a redo, but I didn't realize that at the time. I did not realize that they were going to lose it down over that.
Yeah, that's another kicker right there. I mean, again, you get them off the field, and then you've got 3 and out right away. Just so many things. I mean, I think I just give Vanderbilt the most credit of all. I mean, the 4th and 1 play, beat Malachi over the top. They just beat Alabama. I don't have a ton of excuses. I think they limited their mistakes, which was a big deal, but you got to do that. You got to go for it when you do. I think Clark Lee's a hell of a coach. The fact that he was about to kick a field goal and he looked up and Ryan was back there and punted, that tells me a lot of what I need to know, Jimmy.
I thought that was, wasn't a lot comical tonight, but I thought that was obviously what happened. They're going to kick a long field goal. They saw Kalen DeBoer put number 2 under the goalpost, and they're like, hey, let's not do this. What a nod to Ryan Williams, from the Vanderbilt staff. Clark Lee's done an excellent job. Again, I do want to give a ton of credit to Diego Pavia. I think he almost single-handedly has changed Vanderbilt. They're a good team, but they're not an elite SEC team. Let's not make any illusions that they're about to go 5.
They're better than the Vandy of old.
No question. That's true.
That's such a low.
They are not Alabama. Alabama should not have lost this game today.
No.
Correct. But they're not old Vandy by any means. This is a new Vanderbilt. They're better at the line of scrimmage. I said it on the show this week with Charlie and Blake. They were better at the line of scrimmage than they've been. I like their plan. I've said for years Vanderbilt should go the Army, Navy, Air Force route and run a lot of option football or do something a little different because they're not going to have the athletes to match up against other SEC athletes, and they should be a little gimmicky. And it took, signing Diego Pavia for them to completely turn it over to an option type offense. And this is what they should have been doing forever, but they got the right quarterback. And hey, give them a lot of credit. I do give them a lot of credit. And again, the Alabama offense played well enough to win this game, but couldn't overcome. In fact, guys, what I would say is, in retrospect, I wasn't sure what Alabama should have done. I was unsure myself, so I'm not going to totally criticize. But at the end, what cost Alabama the game was not trying the onside kick when they trusted the defense to give them the ball back at the end. That was the fatal mistake. Now, an onside kick is not a high percentage play, but in the end, They trusted the defense to give them the ball back, and it was just not a good day to trust the defense at all.
No, I agree with that. I think one of the biggest things that stands out, we talked about beating Georgia. You get a little bit of leeway with that win. Now you got to definitely win through the rest of this regular season, in my opinion. You definitely want to have Georgia win out. You want that loss to look as good as possible. There's just a lot. I mean, you lost. This is not a loss you expect. You go to Tennessee, you go to LSU, LSU, you play Georgia at home. Those are games that you can understand a loss. You know what I mean? But this isn't just, I mean, I think more people are embarrassed or shocked than angry, which is probably even scarier. I mean, I think probably even scarier than being pissed off, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, so I felt. I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, it was an embarrassing loss, more so than it's not like you're going to Texas A&M and losing a close game on the road in College Station or going down to Baton Rouge and losing. You're losing essentially a home game in Nashville.
Yeah,
and there's more Alabama fans in Nashville today than there were Vandy fans. And, the Vandy fans deserve to storm the field today. And however many, thousands there were, a few thousand less than Alabama had on there, in the crowd today. But yeah, it's an embarrassing loss for the Alabama program and for this Alabama coaching staff because, we talked about it earlier in the week. What was this staff known for? What was Coach Kalen DeBoer known for? He was known for winning games. I mean, 100, what was it, 112 or 109 and 12. And then he comes in and beats Georgia, goes on the road, wins at Wisconsin, blowout win. And you saw what Wisconsin did today against Purdue. I mean, it was a blowout win against Purdue. But then you go up to Vanderbilt, you think this is one of those games where you are going to comfortably win. You are a 23-point favorite. I think back to Stanford so many years ago when they upset USC and how big of an upset that was when they were 29-point underdogs at home. Vanderbilt pulled off that big underdog upset today, and it's an embarrassing loss for the Alabama football program because, one, they have better players. Two, I think they have better coaches, and they just were not prepared for this game today.
Look, man, you're in dangerous territory when they're mentioning the Jimmy Carter era. Like this hasn't happened since Jimmy Carter was president. I mean, I'm like, dude, that, it's been a while since he was in office. So, I mean, that's obviously a game changer. But, I mean, this, we said this, Jimmy, how many times? I say it every week, any given Saturday. Well, this time it was Bama's turn, and it was an embarrassing turn. How do they bounce back? This game, these sports, any sport keeps you humble. But if this doesn't humble you, nothing will.
What makes this so historic, guys, is this. Again, Alabama loses to Louisiana Monroe in 2007, but that Alabama team wasn't good. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt in 1984. That Alabama team finished 5-6. I mean, this is one of the best Alabama teams of all time to lose a game like this. That's the history. This Alabama team is good. They beat Georgia last week. We know they're good, and they lost this game. That's what's historic. Alabama's lost. I've watched Alabama lose to Central Florida and Northern Illinois. I watched Alabama lose to Louisiana Tech twice. But none of those teams were good. This team is good. I know they are. I saw them be really good 7 days ago. That's what's so just absolutely shocking.
Yeah, when you start talking about the loss of a lifetime, you know what I mean? And you got to hope at this stage, that's where you're at. Still a lot of football left. I will say, to be positive, all Alabama's goals are ahead of them. Every single goal they had to start the season. But again, this isn't like losing to Texas last year when we said that. All their goals was ahead of them. This is losing to Vanderbilt. We're about to find out what this team is made of. How do they battle back? Because they've got a rough stretch. There's going to be other games they're going to try to expose them. I think at some point you have to wonder if you're going to be prideful and just stick with what isn't working, or if you're going to go in here and mix it up. I mean, I was not impressed with the linebacker play today. I didn't think Lawson and I didn't think Jihad was great. I mean, I think Q Robinson had some second half plays that actually kept them in the game a little bit, put them behind the chains, but I think they kind of picked them apart passing. They were smart with the passes they took, Andrew.
Yeah, they were, and I mean, good point on the linebacker play. I mean, I feel like the last 4 games, all we've heard about every single game. Jahad Campbell all over the field, sideline to sideline, making plays. Tipping balls. Deontay Lawson doing the same, making big plays. You hardly heard their name mentioned at all today. They've got to step up and make big plays. This is a defense where the inside linebackers are, supposed to make things happen. Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell got lost a little bit today, and I'm really interested to see kind of what is going to happen moving forward. I mean, this was obviously a big learning experience for them. Is this a wake-up call for them, or is this something that we're potentially going to see over the course of the next couple of weeks be an issue? So hopefully they're going to figure some things out, because they've got a lot to figure out, especially, like I said earlier, 67 points over the last 6 quarters of football. That's not good. That's very bad play.
It's impossible. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't even know where you begin. I mean, again, I just think that Vanderbilt played a better football game than Alabama did. Alabama made plays, but defensively, I'm having trouble really highlighting anybody. They were great on first and second down, but again, they're 1 for 1 on fourth down. I think they're 12 of 16 or 17 on a third down or whatever they were. But at one point, again, 9 out of 11, 9 out of 11, still got games, a lot of SEC football left to play. You're kind of in the heart of it, but you're not going to be able to ride that Georgia. I mean, your Georgia goodwill is completely gone. You've lost to Vanderbilt. And, I mean, this is probably going to be the absolute biggest upset in college football this year, Jimmy, and probably of the decade at some point. I mean, this is number 1 losing at Vanderbilt.
It's hard to imagine. I didn't even really contemplate it before the game that was even a potential outcome. I thought Alabama might not play well. I said on the board on the roundtable a couple of times this week. I think I'd said it to a point others noticed. I thought Alabama might be only ahead 14-10 at the half and then win 41-10 by the time the game was over. I anticipated a slow start. I think it's natural human nature to have a letdown after what happened 7 days ago. I think that's normal, and everyone should have expected that. But that wasn't a letdown. That was something that went far beyond that. And again, it indicated, I think, a lot of bad, temperature reads, particularly as it relates to the leadership on defense. And Tim, you made a great point about the linebacker play. I mean, Jahad Campbell is a future NFL star. So is Deontay Lawson. They were bad. The interior defensive line in the first half, dealing with that inside run on the option, terrible. I mean, F-. Tim Keenan, a good player. Tim Smith, anyone that put Damon Payne played a lot of snaps, by the way, bad. I mean, it's just no one on that defense could have possibly graded out well. And hey, give some credit to Vanderbilt. They somehow found a way. And Diego, what a dude. I thought the comparisons to Johnny Manziel were silly. Maybe not. He looked like Manziel out there.
No, he's not Manziel.
Well,
Manziel.
Tell the Alabama defense.
Well, I'm not sure that's all. I mean, Carson Beck's not Manziel either, I mean, there's going to be other quarterbacks. They're not all going to be Manziel. If they stick with what they're doing, we're going to see a lot of that. I'll tell you when Alabama scored before the half, I said, hey, you got 3 timeouts, 2 timeouts, whatever you got. You're getting the ball again, stop them. And then they get up the field again. That shuffle pass, Keon Saab kind of got, didn't break down and get into that. That's when I was like, shoot, this team is struggling. Andrew Bone, it's your daughter's birthday. Happy birthday to Molly, 1 year old today.
Yay.
Give us one final thought before you get out of here and we bring in Joseph Hastings.
I mean, it's going to be a, coming to Jesus moment this week for Alabama football. I mean, they got South Carolina coming into town. South Carolina just getting blown out by Ole Miss. I don't know if I guess that game's over. Got a lot to learn, got a lot to figure out this week. Hopefully they can. I still think this team's got a lot left in the tank, but today was an embarrassing loss. Sorry to Molly. I know this was your first birthday, and I'm not going to remind you about this the rest of your life. But
well, that's nice of you not to blame it on her first birthday.
Yeah,
that's pretty.
It's all our fault. We had a bunch of people over at the house, and I think she already went to bed. So hopefully she didn't see the end of the game. But hey, I still think this team can. We saw a great team last week against Georgia. Saw a terrible team this week. what team are we going to see the rest of the season? Wait to find out.
All right, Andrew. We'll see you later in this week on the other shows. Let's bring in Joseph Hastings.
Hey, buddy.
Joseph, kind of rough one to bring you in here. Very odd game to watch. Give us some of your thoughts. I mean, the start obviously was scary. You kept waiting for Bama to make that moment. I'm sure, like everybody else, it just never happened.
I don't know what this team is. I don't have an idea of what this team is 5 games into the season. Against Wisconsin, Tyler Van Dyke gets knocked out first possession, so they have a backup quarterback. Hard to really judge them. USF, first 3 quarters, it's 14-13, heading into the fourth. Back and forth with them at home. Against Georgia, that second half, what Georgia did to them, with that miraculous comeback, and then what we saw today, I don't know. I've seen a lot of different versions of this Alabama football team. Jimmy said it best last week. This team could play when it's at its absolute best. It can beat anybody in the country, but it also has the potential. The team has the potential to play what we saw today. Just poor level football on the defensive side of the ball. A couple costly mistakes on offense, but this one falls solely on the defense. Absolutely.
Yeah. I will say I felt like there's probably some humbling that maybe some of them deserved. I mean, there's been a lot of talking this year, and I know you feed that, and I'm a old school football guy. Well, talking's part of the game, but you're not always having to talk, and I think that's something that's probably something that's going to be addressed. I know there's a lot of people mentioning it. I'm getting text about it. I mean, there's just stuff you expect from your leaders. And at this point, like I said, Alabama's going to look at game film, and they're not going to say, we had 5 turnovers. They're going to say, this team kicked our butt. That's what they're going to say, Jimmy.
I like the negativity about Alabama's talking on defense. I didn't like the attitude the whole game. And I know Pavia is a big part of it. I mean, he's a talker, and you don't normally see that out of the quarterback position. He talked during the week. He talked during the game. And Alabama just totally fell into it. And I don't think that's something you normally see out of an Alabama defense, but I do question some of the leadership. There was way too much talking and not enough playing. And again, not a single player on defense. I mean, I'll do stock up, stock down. I think I do that on Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. Don't look for any defender on stock up this week. I mean, it's, I thought, a complete across the board horrific performance by the coaches and the players, and too much talking, not enough playing, and we'll see what happens going forward. I do like what Tim said earlier in the show. All the goals are still in front of them. You can make the playoff at 11-1, even with the loss to Vanderbilt, and win the SEC and go to Atlanta. You can do all those things. It's just kind of hard to imagine after that game that this is a team that can do those things. So hopefully they can prove us wrong a little bit and put it back together.
Yeah, I've been waiting to see what would happen. I mean, it's a different world, right now, but we're seeing podcasts. You're seeing a lot of visual stuff. Bama had so much love. They were feeling themselves. I mean, this is as there's experience on this team. There's also a lot of youth and new players. I'm curious to see how Malachi bounces back from it as a team leader. Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I get it. It was a huge win against Georgia last week. It absolutely was. But that second half should have humbled. That should have been the humbling experience there that, you can't get too far ahead of yourself. You let them come back into that game. It takes an unbelievable play by Ryan Williams and a throw by Jalen Monroe to win you that one. And Georgia was marching down the field. They could have had an opportunity to tie that one, send it to overtime, or go for 2 and win it. That should have been the humbling there. And to tell yourself, hey, we have to make sure that we're on our guard and don't let anything slip. And they talked about it, the mouse traps, and making sure that they don't get caught flat-footed this week. And that's exactly what happened. Exactly what they were nervous about, what they were talked about could happen. It happened. And I think what was most disappointing was, I thought in the second half, Jimmy, you mentioned it. You thought, okay, maybe they'll get up 14-10, then adjust in the second half and really take over. They didn't see any adjustments. Vanderbilt did exactly what they wanted to do.
Jimmy, I was really surprised to see the start of the game kind of like a lot of passing more than establishing the run. I thought Jam is a good running back. He is an NFL back He's not as sexy as some of the other guys. He's probably not a 4-4 legit guy, but he moves like a running back. He's big, he's burly. I just don't feel like he got enough touches, especially early on, which kind of kept him behind the chains at times. Sort of the pressure on him more than behind the chains. But, I mean, how many rushes did he have tonight? Do you have 5, 6 rushes tonight?
I mean, underutilized is an
Yeah, he had 5. He was third on the team in rushes, and he averaged 9 yards a run, and he had 2 touchdowns. I just think that, he's a fall forward kind of guy, looking for a little makeup. I felt after last week not having a great game.
Yeah, underutilized is an understatement with him. He's highly productive when he's given the opportunity. And I'm not ripping on Justice Haynes, but just Jam Miller has been clearly the more productive back when given the opportunities. He catches the ball. He makes plays. He's so physical. And Alabama had a real problem with time of possession. And maybe you fix that to some degree by just relying on your back. And they didn't do that. And again, it may come down to the very end of the game. I mean, what I can't get past is they should have onside kicked at the end of the game. Absolutely. And that what bugs me to death and will bug me all week is I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but they should have onside kicked. They never should have trusted the defense. And that's, boy, that isn't that something.
I'll tell you, I'll go a step further. I almost felt at the end of the half, they called for 2, right? Go for 2. That was their sting. They had a lot of success on offense. I would have went 8 for 7 until I had the lead if I had to, pray for a field goal. But I mean, dude, when your defense is so bad, people are celebrating them kicking a field goal on you. That's not a good night. I think you got to go to the chalkboard. You got to figure it out. I didn't see a lot of Jefferson tonight. I'm assuming he's healthy. He was on the play. Didn't see that. I mean, you got to get the right guy. That Vanderbilt quarterback was elusive. So when he kept the ball, you had Overton and them. They weren't able to adjust to him. Now, Q Robinson was. Quay Russaw, a healthy Quay Russaw would be able to. But, I mean, again, just the same plays defensively all night, I felt like, Joseph.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous now with, Alabama against running quarterbacks. Saw USF give them some troubles, Byron Brown and yeah, we saw what happened today. A little bit nervous about that and what's going to happen there in the future. And, maybe that explains the hot start against Georgia. Carson Beck being, more not as mobile as those guys are, not being able to create plays out of the pocket. So, but yeah, look, I don't know. I'm kind of lost for words right now in terms of how to explain what we just saw. I get it. The defense just wasn't good today, just wasn't good enough. But again, at the same time, that Alabama offense, they put up 42 points or 41 points every single game this year. And they could have gone to that number. They're just, you had that two number 2s on the field. You had the pick 6, you had the fumble. You had all these things. Alabama could have easily put up over 50 points. And yes, we would still be having concerns about this defense, but at least they'd be 5-0 and still number 1 in the country. But man, yeah, hard to explain it.
It doesn't get a lot easier. I mean, it doesn't get easier than Vanderbilt, obviously. I mean, one of the, I will say this again, I respect what Vanderbilt did. I do think Vanderbilt won this football game, but their tradition, like Jimmy said, they got a couple bad losses this year. They've been competitive, but you get South Carolina coming to town, and you better start figuring it out because then you're at Tennessee. And the one thing we know, Josh Heupel, if it's 61-60, he's fine with it. He is going to go, he's going to go for broke. You're going to see that. You still got to go to LSU. At this stage, every game. We talked about this earlier in the year, Jimmy. I felt like Alabama's a team that's basically game to game to game. No looking ahead. And that I kind of feel like maybe that happened tonight and, maybe from the coaching staff.
Yeah, I want to be a little guarded about what I say about the coaching staff because college football is difficult. It's difficult to win every week. When you coach a college football team, you coach a different team every week. I heard that from Lou Holtz years ago. It stuck with me. It's so true. You coach a different team every week. Perfect example this week. So I don't want to go too far, but Kalen DeBoer had some really questionable performances last year right after Washington beat Oregon. They almost lost to Arizona State on the road. I mean, it's very similar. Is this a habit? Is this something that's going to happen? I don't know. But I don't want to go too far with the coaching staff, other than I will say this was an F- for Kane Womack and his defensive staff. That was the worst. I'm going to have to think it through, guys, but that was probably the worst defensive performance I've ever seen an Alabama defense for with a good team. Alabama's defense in the past there's been some clunkers when there's some bad teams. That was the worst defensive performance by a good team I've ever seen at Alabama, and I'm old.
Yeah, I think now going forward, what do you do? I think one, the humbling is part there. Two, you got to figure out some adjustments. You cannot treat. We're got 2 games coming up now. You cannot treat Georgia. You cannot, as the same as Vandy. You cannot treat South Carolina the same as Tennessee. These are 2 different animals you're having to. I want to see pressure on the football, and you're not going to get it with a 4-man front against 5 offensive linemen. You're not. It's very rare. You're going to have to get up there, get some guys in there. You're going to have to bring some bandits. You're going to have to bring some blitzers. You're going to have to leave yourself exposed at times. You're going to have to make the quarterback, pressure the quarterback to make passes. And I thought Jalen, again, was under more pressure tonight than the Vanderbilt quarterback, Jimmy.
No doubt. There was zero pressure on Diego Pavia. Now, of course, almost everything's an option. Almost everything's going to east and west. He's a physical kid. It's tough to bring him down. And he's probably – here's a good question, guys. Is he Deshaun Watson, Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel? No. But is he Steven Garcia? Who's that kid at Oklahoma, Travis Knight? I don't think so. I mean, I think he's somewhere in the middle in terms of quarterbacks that's beaten Alabama since the Saban era started. He's a difficult kid to defend, and I do want to give him a ton of credit. If he had signed with a school that had more weapons, there's no telling how people might view him. But I'm hesitant to put him in the elite category. But boy, Alabama made him look elite tonight.
Yeah, I wonder how this changes. I mean, you see the media access is wide open, access to players. Maybe it's time to shrink that pool a little bit, and make them focus. You got a lot of coaches. And look, I'm all about the coaches talking, especially after this week. You should be talking to every single coach on this staff to some degree. Some more than others, obviously, but maybe shrink the players down, try to refocus them. It's just so hard with everything that happens at any university. It's not just Alabama. But after last week with the Ryan attention, the Jalen coming, I looked up this morning, they were saying 4 out of 20 NFL guys said Jalen was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. So it's not, and I don't think that necessarily changes you, but you're strutting a little different. And I thought Jalen played fine for the most part. I don't have any problems with this game. I think Jalen's the least of Alabama's worries, and that probably wasn't the same as this time last year. But Joseph, what do you think? Maybe shrink that a little bit, the access, and let the coaches deal with it on their own.
It's tough because 1 week ago today, we're talking about a win over Georgia and everything's great. And talking about Alabama potentially winning the national championship, us, talking about Bama being the number 1 team in the country before the AP poll was released, and how quickly things have changed. So I'm not too sure. I want to see how things play out against South Carolina, against Tennessee, and then maybe make some adjustments. But yeah, Bama's on high alert right now. You're on high. This football team is on high alert. Not just because of what Vanderbilt did, what Georgia did in the second half, what USF did for the first 3 quarters. This Bama team, we're looking back on some of those tight performances and some lapses in the defense and looking at it a little bit more questionably now.
Yeah, I don't think all's lost. I know it feels that way. I didn't feel last week all was won after the Georgia game. I didn't say, hey, playoffs locked in. I just think this is a team that's going to have to put themselves, and I think you have to, if you're Kane Womack, who's an experienced coach, you have to put yourself and say, am I running what's the best for this team? Am I running what's the best with this personnel? I mean, you got to give props to Bonnie Jackson, had a good game. Xavier Brown, showing out there. Brown's having a good game. All that. I didn't understand. Even the start, like Emmanuel Henderson returning kickoff surprised me. And I don't know if he crossed the 15-yard line. So you're behind, not the chains, but you're inside your 20. When you get a handoff, a layup to the 25, and nothing against Emmanuel, but he did not look natural returning those kickoffs, Jimmy Stein.
No, and he also almost fumbled. I know that's a weird thing to say, but I'm just different. I'm so old school. Gene Stallings thinks I'm old school, but when Emmanuel Henderson almost fumbled that kickoff return, I'd go to somebody else because you can't even make that close. You've got to protect the football on change of possession type things, and special teams wasn't particularly special for Alabama tonight either. But Emmanuel almost turned it over there, and of course the officials made the correct call. But I didn't like it. And hey, Alabama's missing a couple guys. Kendrick Law was out. Kobe Prentice got hurt during the game. That hurts your wide receiver core a little bit. But overall, I thought Alabama's offense was fine. It wasn't spectacular. It wasn't good enough. I'd have liked to see them run the ball more. We talked about that earlier in the show. I'd have preferred to see Jam Miller have an even bigger role. But overall, the offense played well enough to win the game. The defense just didn't give them a chance.
Guys, can I ask a question here? What is the difference, in your opinion, for why Alabama employs Cole Adams returning punts versus Ryan Williams? Because that proved to be costly with the penalty there. Like, is there a difference in terms of, maybe Ryan is more explosive, but at that point in the field, if he would have caught it, he's not going to be able to do anything.
DeBoer has said, DeBoer has said that he wants to substitute based on game situation. So he wants 2 or 3. He did the same thing at Washington last year, where he had 2-3 punt returners. Jeremy Bernard was one of them. And he hasn't returned a punt here at Alabama. But DeBoer says he likes to do it based on game situation. I'm not. That's new to me, so I'm uncomfortable with it myself. Yeah. And I'm with you. I kind of want to go with one guy I trust. I'm big on catching the ball. And, Cole seems really consistent in terms of catching the ball. Now, obviously, it might be a thing where DeBoer feels like, hey, we really need to catch the ball here. Let's use Cole. Or, hey, we're behind and we need to play here. Let's use Ryan. I'm not sure that creates a rhythm, maybe. And I prefer just having one punt returner. But again, even Gene Stallings thinks I'm old school.
We walked into this. I think we walked into this season with some questions about the Womack defense and the style and it was going to use. I think this is the first huge sign of adversity. I think the second half of Georgia caused a lot of problems. You kind of could write that off, though. Georgia's 5 for 5 on fourth downs. They had a couple more. They would have been 7 for 7 if there wasn't a couple of penalties. That kind of set it off. But even then, you're saying they're playing with 4 downs. Well, today they were getting a lot of third downs. So I think we're going to see, exactly how you change, how you move to fix it, because something's broke. Something's broke. And it wasn't just the running game. I mean, they had 160-something yards passing, I think, got burned a couple of times. They got a lot of third downs on passes, some easy looks, Joseph.
Yeah, they did. It's concerning what you see, especially with mobile quarterbacks, and you look down the line at some of the guys that Alabama's going to be playing. You think about Lenore Sellers, and I know Nico has some escapability too. Man, that Tennessee game, we already knew that had the potential to be maybe what we saw a couple of years ago. I wouldn't be surprised. Honestly, at this point, would it shock anyone if Tennessee scores 60 plus based off what we saw today? I mean, Alabama could not get the ball back. At the end of the game, I don't know if any of you all felt this. When Vanderbilt got that ball and they decided to not do the onside kick, did anyone feel that Bama was going to get the ball back? I felt if they did, Bama would have a shot, especially with a decent amount of time left.
Did they even get to a third down?
No.
Did they even get a third down? I feel like they were. Yeah, I don't even remember pressuring them. I think it was just second down. And obviously the defense was wore down by then. I mean, they'd been on the field the entire game. They probably are discouraged because they're running the same plays that they've had trouble with for 57, 58 minutes. So I think morale was down. I mean, you saw at the end some frustration, but we'll know more about Alabama next week. I mean, I see a lot of the comments writing off this Alabama team. Nobody felt that way last week. Are they Alabama in the first half against Georgia, where the defense was really good? Or is this Alabama? Because if this is Alabama, they're definitely going to lose a couple more games most likely. Or they're going to be in a 60-53 shootout every game to try to win these games. But there's still plenty of football left to play. Joseph Hastings, before we get out of here, give us one final thought.
Yeah, I would just piggyback off that last comment there. There's plenty of football left to play. Alabama's defense, before that Georgia first half, they had given up 27 points this season. Since then, they've given up 60, not counting the pick six, obviously. So, over the last 6 quarters, giving up 60 points. We'll see what this defense is made of. Maybe not necessarily at home against South Carolina, 2 weeks against Tennessee. That's going to obviously be the next huge test. But bad loss, but like you said, all the goals are still in front of them. Everything is still in front of them at this time.
The one thing I'll add to Joseph, if they don't come out and dominate South Carolina, after a loss like this, I think eyebrows will definitely be raised. Jimmy Stein, give us a final thought before we get out of here.
Yeah, no reason at all to think that this is the Alabama team you'll see over the next 7 games. That's crazy. I think you'll see a lot of the Alabama team we saw before today, and we'll find out. Against South Carolina, I agree with Tim. It's going to be a test to see how Alabama gets off the mat, but don't go too far in making too many crazy assumptions. All their goals are still in front of them. This is still a good football team capable of doing a lot of great things. And I look forward to seeing how Kalen DeBoer and his staff get off the mat, because they're not just on the mat, they're under it. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, and my final thought is I think next week's as important as Georgia game was. I think you have to come out and establish something. I don't think you want to be a 31-27 win. I think you better show something. It's not a great South Carolina offense, but they'll be feisty. Shane Beamer will have them playing hard, and that's another thing. You've got to match the intensity in some of these games. We saw that with South Florida, where I felt like they were every bit, if not more, intense against Alabama. Well, anyways, we appreciate y'all turning in. Not the night we expected, but we'll be here, win, lose, or draw, and hopefully next week we'll have a little more of the answers to everyone's questions. In the meantime, you can catch us at BamaOnLine.com, and thanks for viewing.